What's up, guys? My name is Mikey. Welcome back to another episode of Broken Belt TV, the channel where we talk about skateboarding, staying clean, and everything in between. Tonight's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be about staying clean or skateboarding. I guess you could classify it as in between. The story I'm about to tell you, if you don't have an open mind, you can go ahead and just skip this video because you're not going to believe a word that comes out of my mouth. I can tell you on my mother's ashes, all I can give as my word is that this is a 100% true story. I have told a few certain people about it, not everybody, but I've told some people who are willing to listen and people who believe in things such as this. So, about 10 years ago, me and my late wife, Jessica, were at the bar. We were having a good time, you know. Yeah, we were a little bit tipsy, but we weren't, plastered or anything like that. We were a little bit tipsy, and we were walking around downtown Washington, Missouri. Historic Washington, Missouri. It's an old town. A lot of old houses, a lot of old buildings. It's a very old town. Anyway, there's this old house, an abandoned home, that since I was tipsy, I was getting a little bit adventurous and was trying to break into. I was trying to bust in the door, and it was very clear that something was blocking the door, as in some furniture, maybe a cabinet, a refrigerator. Somebody had intentionally blocked the door, okay? And I was trying to push it in, to just try to get in, just to explore this abandoned house, and my wife was with me, and we had been talking up to this whole point, up until I started trying to push this door in. Eventually, I heard nothing. Everything went quiet. Crickets went quiet. Birds went quiet. My wife, in particular, went quiet. And I'm trying to push this door in for a good 2 minutes until I realized the silence, and it got to me. So I turn around and I look at my wife. And as I'm looking at my wife, I see her gaze. She has glassy eyes, and she's staring straight-faced, mouth half open, staring up. Again, this is an abandoned old house, so this is several stories. This is a 2-story house with an attic. So her gaze is pointed up towards the attic, okay? And she's not moving. She's acting very different than she was, prior. She was lively. She was having a great time. We had a great time at the bar. We just were having a great night and just exploring the town, the historic parts of the town, okay? So her gaze is fixed upward towards the attic. And I look, and I notice that the look on her face is not a natural look. I say her name. She doesn't acknowledge anything I'm saying. I say her name again. Again, she doesn't acknowledge anything I'm saying. So I come back from the porch, from the house that I was just trying to kind of bust into to explore, little urban exploration, and I follow her eyes. And by God, I'm glad I did. Because whenever I looked up at what she was looking up at, this was, now mind you, this was in, I want to say January, about January. It was probably about 15, 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. She was staring up at something. So I follow her gaze, I follow her eyes, and I look up. And what I saw astonished me. It was a pale, white-skinned thing staring out of this attic window down at us. Down at her, I should say, at this point. It hadn't noticed me yet. It had heard me. It had undoubtedly heard me trying to break into this house. Abandoned. Again, I'm not trying to break into somebody's house that people are living in. I'm just trying to explore an abandoned home. Nobody's in. I'm not, I am breaking laws technically, but I'm not trying to, terrorize a family. This is an abandoned home. Very old house. So I look up and I follow her gaze. And I see this pale-faced, white, humanoid-looking thing staring down at her. And given her glassy eyes and the fact that she would not acknowledge anything I was saying to her, gave me the impression that it was having some effect on her. So I looked up and I followed her gaze. This thing was completely naked in about 15 degrees Fahrenheit, leaning halfway out the attic window, staring at her, staring her down. And whatever it was doing, it was having a mental effect on her, a visible mental effect. Okay? So I look up and I'm staring and I'm seeing that this thing is naked. It kind of looked like a person, but it wasn't. It not exactly. It was white, like I said, pale white, bald, completely bald. Eyes larger than normal, but completely black and void of life. Staring at her, making eye contact. It was having some kind of effect on her. After about 5 seconds of me looking at this thing, I finally broke the silence and I said, "What the fuck is that?" And I said it loud enough to draw its attention. At that point, it then looked at me. And its eyes were far larger. I realized at this point its eyes were far larger than a human's eyes would be. Not to mention, a human would not be shirtless in this weather. There's no way they would have hypothermia. They would freeze to death. It was that cold. Again, I will state where I'm from just to add validity to my story, because I'm not scared to tell you where I'm from, because I am not lying. I am from Washington, Missouri. This is a very small town about 45 miles west of St. Louis, Missouri. Very small town, about 13 to 20,000 people, somewhere in there. It then directs his gaze towards me. Once I break that silence and say, what the bleep is that? What the F is that? It looks at me. And immediately I knew that this was not a human. This could not be a human. It might have been I thought at the time maybe it was a ghost. But after doing some research online, I realized that there's a cryptid called a crawler, also known as a rake, which are white, humanoid-looking creatures with big, large black eyes. I'm not entirely sure what they're capable of doing, but I can tell you one thing they're capable of doing is putting people in a trance, because that's what it did to my wife. So I broke the silence. I said, "What the fuck is that?" And it looked at me. And as soon as it looked at me, it was a stare of dominance. It was a stare of, I'm going to hurt you, or at the very least, I'm going to try to scare you. And I had to return the stare in kind. Think of it like this, like if a bear is coming after your loved ones, what you're going to want to do is roar at it. Be as loud as you can, take the attention off of your loved ones to get the attention to you, and challenge it to show it that you are not prey and that your loved ones are not prey. So that's what I did. I didn't yell at it or scream at it, but I returned that stare in kind, that stare of dominance. I wanted to show this thing that it was not looking at an average meal. It was not looking at its average prey, that I was not going to allow it to take my wife or myself. But if it was going to take anyone, it was going to take me. So I had to return that stare in kind. And roaring at a bear is the best analogy I can give for the situation that I was in. We locked eyes for about 30 seconds. Now my wife, in this thing, whatever it was, if it was a crawler or a rake, and after research online, I didn't find out till after the fact that there was a good possibility that it was a rake. Because after researching, I realized, wow, that's exactly what I saw. After seeing pictures and artist, illustrations of this cryptid, I realized years later that's what we saw. It wasn't a ghost, and it certainly wasn't a human. A human could not survive those temperature conditions naked. And a human does not look as pale and as bald and as featureless as this thing looked. The most noticeable feature on its face were the eyes. They were huge, and they were deathly black. This is something, like I said, if you don't have an open mind to just stop it now because you're not going to believe a word I'm saying, but this on my mother's ashes took place. So I stare back in kind, and it took every ounce of courage in me to not sprint away. But I also knew in the back of my mind, when you're dealing with a predator, when you run, they see you as prey. So I had to return that stare and gather every ounce of courage to show it that I was not prey and I was not backing down and that it was not taking my wife and it was not taking me. And I was not going to allow that to happen. Okay, so it gets a little bit more interesting after this. After our 30-second showdown, it gave me a stare of dominance. I gave it a stare of dominance back. Finally, thankfully, it retreated back into the shadows of the attic. But the movement that it made zero noise. Now, mind you, this house I'm talking about is 120 plus years old. Wooden, hollow, no furniture in it. Noise will travel. Okay? This is an open attic window. Noise will travel. This thing retreated and almost floated to the back of the attic to where I could no longer see it in the shadows. And I didn't even hear so much as a pin drop. That is not possible for a human to move that quietly. I don't care if you're a Marine or a Navy SEAL with noise discipline, that whatever they call that type of training, it is not possible to move the way this thing moved back without making a sound. It made no sound. Nothing. Not a noise. And as soon as it moved away, I ran. And I ran as fast as I could, and I grabbed my wife. And my wife's reaction was laughter. As soon as she was pulled out of whatever state of mind she was put in, she was laughing so hard that she couldn't even walk. She was laughing so hysterically that I was afraid that she had pissed her pants. I was dragging her down this alleyway after this thing had retreated back into the attic. I was dragging her physically down the alleyway until we got home. And to this day, well, not to this day because she has passed away, but up until the day she passed away, she does not remember any of this. I'm from Washington, Missouri. And I will tell you right now, monsters are real. You can believe me, you cannot believe me, make fun of me in the comments. I don't give a shit. Because you know what? I know what I saw. I know what my wife saw. And I know what it did to my wife. Crawlers or rakes, however you want to refer to them, they are real. I can't speak on any other cryptid except spook lights or Foo Fighters, if you will. I've seen one of those myself, but other than that, this was the craziest thing that I've ever seen to date in my life. And I've grown up in a haunted house my whole life. I've had experiences you wouldn't believe when it comes to the paranormal. But this trumps everything. Trumps anything I've ever seen in my life. And I've been wanting to get this story out. I've been telling a bunch of people about it. And most people don't believe me. Understandably so, because it's a pretty wild story. But I will tell you, you guys, avoid the woods at night. You understand? And this wasn't even in the woods. This was in a community. This was in a small town in an abandoned house, not even in the woods. But I will tell you, if this thing is walking around in our town, going from abandoned house to abandoned house, I don't even want to know what's in the woods. The Appalachian stories you hear about, don't ever whistle, don't ever knock on trees, they need to be taken seriously, because you know what? I know what I saw. You can call me whatever you want. You cannot believe me. I don't care. But I know what I saw. And for the believers, listen to this story. Because it's honest and it's true. And I don't know why I got the urge to tell this story tonight, but I just wanted to tell it. It was it was one of the scariest, one of the scariest confrontations I've ever had in my life. This thing locked eyes with me, and when it did, the death in its eyes, the emptiness, the dominance in its stare was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. This has nothing to do with skateboarding, nothing to do with staying clean, and can hardly be considered in between. But I just had to get this out because this is a 100% true story. Anyone from Washington who wants to know the specific house can DM me, and I will show you personally the house that I saw this happen in. I just had to get that out there, guys. Had to get it off my chest. I hope some people watch this. Cryptid believers, people who believe in cryptids and Bigfoot and, you know, all that type of stuff. Get at me in the comments. I would love to go further into detail. I know I'm probably forgetting a lot of details. I just wanted to keep this quick. But I had to get this off my chest. And I am going to add this to my, to my channel. Just because it's a crazy-ass story. And it's a true-ass story. Or I wouldn't have taken the time to tell it. Because this would be a really specific, extravagant lie. If it was a lie. I would have I have serious issues. But I would have more issues if this was a lie. That's a little out there for me to make this up and make a video about it. Yeah. This is Mikey Creason. Broken Bell TV. Signing out.